Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ezequiel Maza. I am based in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. I've been with SAP for over 9 years. And as of April this year, I mentioned this in a previous session that I was lucky enough that my gay job and my day job merged, as I'm now head of diversity and inclusion for SAP Latin America and the Caribbean. And before that, I used to work in finance and lead our Pride at SAP ERG. My pronouns are he and him. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eugenia Linares Traiman, and I've been working at SAP for 5 years almost. And I'm in finance as a revenue analyst for cloud controlling as my day job. And since May of this year, my gay job is as co-leader of the Pride ERG in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And my pronouns are she and her. Thank you.
Great. Hello to everyone. My name is Luciano Dolenti. I have been working at SAP for 7 years now. I work as a finance operation analyst for SAP Concur, and my day job is working as a volunteer in the ERG in the ERG Pride network, in which I have been working for the last 2 years. I go by he and him. Those are my gender pronouns. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we can get started. We're here today to talk about a project that's very close to our hearts, which is Casa Trans, which that would translate into trans house, but it was more of a home than a house. So my translation would be trans home for this organization. And this is the agenda that we have for today. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the context of the transgender community in Argentina. Then we will share the details of the project that we developed for Casa Trans and the impact. And then we're going to have a space for a Q&A at the end. So I will start with the context so that you can have some background. We need first to address the reality of the transgender community in Argentina, which you might be familiar with because it's similar across different geographies, no matter the language or the time zone we're at. You know, Argentina is a country that's been praised for its progressiveness in the past years. And we were the 10th country in the world and first in Latin America to pass marriage equality into law back in 2010. We were also one of the first countries to uphold legislation to protect gender identity back in 2012, through which anyone should be able to go through any kind of treatment or surgery necessary to, to fully embrace who they are, and also they should be able to change their IDs without the need for a psychological assessment. That was 8 years ago. And just last month, a decree was signed by the president to ensure that 1% of all positions in public office should be held by trans individuals. So in terms of legislation, it's safe to say that we are moving forward in the right direction. However, society, as it usually happens, is lagging behind. When a big majority of trans people do not have access to equal opportunity, when most doors are shut for them. And I have some concrete numbers to share with you. 77% of trans people in Latin America are kicked out of their homes at a very early age. So then school obviously becomes a problem, either because of bullying or because priorities change, right? So just, you know, how to survive on your own without a family that supports you. So at least 25% of trans people drop out of school. And of course, then the job market narrows down, not only because of the fact that they didn't finish high school, but also because of who they are. You know, discrimination, prejudice, bias. This is a common theme for trans individuals, even violence. In Argentina, last year, one transgender woman was murdered every 5 days just for being who they are. And the life expectancy of a trans woman is between 35 and 41 years of age. This is for overall in Latin America. So this is a very harsh reality that people have to face. And while the three of us here, the three speakers here, are all of us are cisgender, we knew that there was something that we could do from our position of privilege to contribute to a positive change. So back in 2017, I met this organization, Casa Trans, or Trans Home, through a connection that I had at the Department of Human Rights in Argentina. And Casa Trans is an organization that's supported by the government of the city of Buenos Aires and managed by ATA. ATA is the Argentine Association of Trans People. And here there was a lot of potential for great impact. You know, this home is a safe space for trans people in Buenos Aires to attend during the day, where they get counseling, they can have medical tests done, they have access to a lot of learning opportunities. So, for instance, they can complete their high school studies, learn skills for a new job. You know, there's a wide range of learning offerings available to them. And well, I was really impressed. I was in awe of this organization and the home that they had created, and I wanted to collaborate somehow. So with our amazing Pride SAP ERG and SAP's CSR and HR teams, we embarked on this project. So first of all, the first step was, okay, let's get some volunteers to think of the ways that we can help out. So we did a lot of brainstorming and prep work. We met with the organization on numerous occasions to fully understand their needs and challenges. And then the first thing we did was, okay, now that we have a clear understanding, let's make a donation of laptops so that we give them the tools to learn new things, because they didn't have any. So we did that, and then we launched a new learning program specifically catered to trans people. And this learning program included both computing and English weekly lessons. And that's how it all began, I would say almost 3 years ago. And Luciano and Eugenia will now tell you a bit more about the ins and outs of the project and how it all came into place. And Luciano, I think you're going to start by sharing an anecdote of how you started, right? How you first got involved with Casa Trans. So on to you, Lucho. We cannot hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect, I'm sorry. Sorry about my background as well, it's not quite working. So yeah, thank you. As Ezequiel mentioned, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my experience in Casa Trans, how I started volunteering, and also started working for the ERG. It was pretty pretty much by chance that I started working, volunteering in Casa Trans. I remember it was back in 2018 when my manager at the time, she was supposed to go to give a job with some other volunteers to Casa Trans. They were going to teach about job placement. Unfortunately, that day, her father was admitted into intensive care for health problems, so she couldn't go. And she said, Lucho, I go by Lucho, that's my nickname. I need you to go cover for me. And I said, okay, I can do it, I'll do it. So she sent me the PDF presentation that Eugenia did. I read it and we went to Casa Trans with the colleagues. So when we got there, there were like 10 people waiting already. And by the time we started, we were like 15 people pretty much. So we began to teach them about job placement. We got into details about what companies or employers expect from their employees. In general, questions they might ask. And we even conducted interviews so we could practice. It was very fun. They were very enthusiastic about it. And when we did the role play, they were the interviewer and the interviewee. They liked it. You could see they really wanted to learn. They had many questions about it. You need to know that many of them never had a formal job, not even a job interview. And many of them still work on the street. So after we finished that day, I remember I left Casa Trans with a vision and understanding that I didn't have before. How opportunities and privileges are so unequal, even in our LGBTIQ+ community, and that there is a lot to do. So after that first contact with Casa Trans, I would like to say though that despite this, I left with a good feeling, because it was very, I mean, the willingness they had to learn, it was inspiring to see that how they wanted to improve and they want to learn to get out of the situations that they are right now, which is very, very hard actually for them. So I don't know, it was just wonderful to see the desire to move forward in spite of the adversity. That was really inspiring for me, and it really moves me. After that first contact, I was able to see the things that could be done to change and help the trans community through our company, through our ERG, Pride SAP, and that made me commit to a network. That made me start working for the ERG. So then I started participating in the meetings and getting involved little by little. So that was 2019 started, and we were ready to go to Casa Trans to give the classes. We would teach English and computer skills. We went with Eugenia, her wife, some other colleagues, myself. The year began, and one of the great challenges was to maintain the attendance of the students throughout the year, because that was hard. The experience in 2018 was that it was very difficult for students to complete courses. So what we decided for last year was to split the courses into modules, like 4 or 5 classes in 1 month. This way, a study model could be completed and they could really learn something. At the beginning of the year, we made a presentation with a different models, so they would be able to choose between Excel, Word. We had social networks and internet. Eugenia will get into that a little bit more in a few minutes. So it worked. It was better. We had a good attendance throughout the year. And I gotta say that it was very rewarding to see at the end of the class or at the end of the module that they learned something new, especially since many of them started from scratch. For example, when we started Excel, they didn't know where to find it, how to look it up. And by the time we ended the module, they would be able to do a monthly expense sheet. It was a weekly expense sheet, but still, like, change the font size, do some basic Excel formulas. For us, it was important to realize that beyond what we have prepared to teach, we always try to see what was the need at the time, because you have to adapt, because it can totally turn into something else. For example, I remember one day we were teaching English with Eugenia, and she was teaching how to read the time on the clock in English, basic, and they didn't know how to do it in Spanish. So we had to stop with English, and we had to start teaching them how to read the clock and the timing on the clock. I met wonderful people in Casa Trans, people that I'm still in contact with, and each one with a difficult story. It's hard for them. You have to be understanding. I wanted them to attend every class, but they just couldn't sometimes, whether because they have to work at that time or they live far away from Casa Trans and they can, I don't know, they can afford transportation. At the beginning of the year, when we started 2019 with Eugenia, Ezequiel, people from Casa Trans and some students, I remember that was really tough. One girl said, we made the presentation about the classes and everything, and she said, okay, I really like this, I really want to do it, but you have to understand that it might be difficult for me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to assist because I work at that time and I want to do it, but I don't know if I can, so I might come one time. So it's tough. It can be tough, but I loved it, and I like to work for Casa Trans and together with the RG and the CP. That's my experience as a volunteer in Casa Trans, and I love it. It's a home, as Ezequiel said, and Casa, it's a home. So now I'm gonna pass it to Eugenia to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Luciano, for your insight, and Ezequiel. I'm going to go a bit in deeper to what the folks just said, because in 2018, we were able to donate a few laptops through SAP to start with a full year of computing, which lasted from May till November. So how did we set up the programs? We started sending emails, internal emails to our employees to recruit them as volunteers and helping us create the teaching program, the content of the program, and also gave the classes to help us go to Casa Trans. So this way, if someone didn't know how to teach a class, but had the skills and the knowledge in computing programs, they could apply it for the program, but they didn't have to teach, to go to the classes. So once we got the volunteers that we needed, we set up recurrent meetings. This all happened within the office hours. And we decided who was going to take care of the office part, the internet and social media part, and so on. And of course, the teaching part, who was going to go and give a class. That was very challenging. So because of the busy schedule of Casa Trans also, the classes were once a week, and they lasted an hour and a half from 6:30 p.m. And I know it might seem like a very late hour for most of you, but here in Argentina, we have dinner like at 10 p.m. So it was early in the afternoon. So this also became a challenge for us as employees, because we leave the office every day at 6 p.m. during non-COVID times, of course. But as volunteers, we had to leave the office at 5 in order to get to Casa Trans before 6:30. And because the office is so far away from the city and going to Casa Trans. So that was something that we had to do by our own means. And we were lucky enough to count with the manager's approvals for employees to leave earlier once a week to do their volunteer work. And also the meetings set up, as I said before, and the class coordination were during office hours. So we were very happy with the support that we got from the company to go through with this project because it involved a lot of time during working hours. So And it was the same also when we wanted to go from Casa Trans to our own houses once the class was finished, because that was late. It was already 8 p.m. So that was hard to get by during the first year at least. And as Luciano said before, there was an average of 15 people per class from all different ages and different knowledge. So we were able to divide them in 3 groups for beginners, intermediate, and advanced, and teach them in parallel during the class. This is something that happened during the first class. We realized that they were all at different levels and ages also. So this meant that at least 3 people had to go, 3 volunteers had to go to Casa Trans to teach and take care of 1 group each. And it didn't always happen, since not everyone could go every week, or perhaps for some reason they couldn't make it at the last minute. So we learned along the way to deal with these situations and be prepared, have a plan B of our volunteers in case someone had to cancel at the very same day. We also had set up the volunteer rotation program, let's say. Also, we had in advance the fact that we do home office. So we could go from our houses directly to Casa Trans instead of going from the office. And by the end of the year, we were able to provide certificates of completion, which were signed by SAP and Casa Trans to every student. So this is what happened for the first year in computing. And in March in 2019, we gathered with the students from Casa Trans to receive a feedback on the program. We wanted to know what they liked, what could be improved. And one of the major concerns was that the people had to share the computers during the class, and that made it difficult to practice because they had to take turns. The other one, since they were all at different levels of knowledge, not everyone was interested in all the topics that were given during the whole year. And we also had an open session and invited some students and one of the coordinators from Casa Trans to the office at SIP. And this way they could share their stories with the employees, and we could also recruit more volunteers. We came up with better ideas. First, we were able to donate more computers, luckily, and we continue with the computing program. But as Luciano said, we split them into workshops that lasted between 4 to 6 weeks each, and they were for different topics, such as internet and social media, job portals, how to create a resume and have role play interviews, Excel and Word. So by doing it this way, we were able to adapt each course to be taught with job opportunity purposes. For example, in the case of Excel, the contact was oriented for people who were starting their own businesses or wanted to keep record of their expenses. So they would learn how to use it in that way. And same for the rest of the courses. This way, anyone could join the one that they liked. So as a general interest from the participants at Casa Trans, we added English classes, which we didn't expect at all that they wanted to learn it. So with the same schedule as computing and volunteer request, but with the big difference here is that we started from scratch, from level 1, and classes lasted the whole year, from May till November also. The dynamic was also different because we only require 1 or 2 volunteers per class, and the content of the classes was prepared in advance. So there was 1 topic per week that we would print and hand it out to each student so they could actively participate in the class and also practice at home with exercises given as homework. So there was no issue there if they didn't have a computer at home or internet, which happened most of the time. So I think this was the biggest challenge. Volunteers were eager to participate, but just because you know English or any other language, that doesn't mean that you know how to teach it. Although some of them were teachers, so they already had that skill. But for the rest, our meetings were about the content and pace of the classes and teaching the volunteers how to teach at Casa Trans. So the best way to connect and share all the information was through Teams. We created a group and we already had uploaded all the content for the classes and do the follow-ups. So they would stay synced with everything that was being developed for the program. So we had many diverse group of ages, and imagine what it was like to explain formulas or create sentences, to conjugate a verb. We had to teach it first in Spanish and then in English. This happened many times, and it kind of stalled repeatedly during the year. But I think they were brave enough to say what they didn't know, because all they wanted to do was learn. So for this opportunity, we also handed certificates of completion at the end of the year. So it's important to be prepared for unexpected situations when you're teaching another language, to learn about the environment of the trans community, and mostly do follow-ups with the volunteers to keep them updated on how to teach a class and what needs to be reviewed from the previous one. For computing, it is important to that every participant has the chance to use the computer in practice, and it's not easy to come by with money for computers. So working with donations for these educational purposes, it's key, it's very important. So having said this, I give back the word to Ezequiel.
Thank you. Okay, and I just want to highlight that the importance of having you had teaching experience in the past before doing this at Casa Trans, and there were several of the volunteers who had teaching experience, and I think that was also key, right, to teach volunteers how to teach, as you mentioned.
Yeah, not with 20 people, but but yeah, I had some experience previously, so that was.
You're good at it, Eugenia. That's true.
So, talking a little bit about the impact that this program had, you know, for us at SAP in Argentina, this was one of the first connections that we had, that we made with the transgender community. For as far as we knew, there were no trans employees at SAP. I mean, we didn't know for a fact, right? I mean, we don't run any surveys on gender identity, but no one had ever personally approached the Pride SAP team or any of us here to talk about it. So as far as we knew, there were no trans employees back then. So this partnership that we had with Casa Trans was our first real connection and work and collaboration with the transgender community. So it was a door opener for us. You know, Pride SAP in Argentina started back in 2015, and since then we have been doing a lot of learning and awareness. But this really helped us understand the challenges that the trans community face, you know, in so with so much depth. And it also allowed us to explore other opportunities or initiatives to bring trans people to SAP, right? Attract this talent and hire and develop this talent. And that's how we ended up starting a new project with 2 other companies. We did it in partnership with 2 other companies to increase the hiring of trans employees in Argentina. And that's how we hired our first trans employee in SAP Argentina back in 2018. And he's still working at SAP, and he's very happy with the job. He's thrilled with the work environment and the friends that he's made, and with his manager and everything around him. So that was, you know, that connection through Casa Trans with the transgender community was key for us to, you know, define what the next steps would be. And we had high hopes for 2020. We were talking about you know, setting targets, but then we weren't expecting this global pandemic that we are all facing. So of course, as it happened with many other companies, there were lots of restrictions in terms of hiring, external hiring. So for now, we weren't able to make any other hirings of trans people and people in general, right? We're not hiring externally. That's the truth. But after this very successful experience with Casa Trans and with this program that we did to onboard trans employees 2 years ago, that will certainly be one of our goals once these restrictions are lifted. And what we have been doing so far is we've partnered with other organizations that are specialists in the transgender community and in the you know, the challenges that they face, and they have these great databases of trans people who are looking for jobs. So we are already partnering up with them. We're learning from them. We're doing frequent learning sessions with them to know more about you know, all that hiring trans people might involve. And once these restrictions are lifted, we will definitely be looking to onboard more trans people at SAP in Argentina. So that was one of the you know, one of the direct results of working with Casa Trans, to look inside our own company and say, okay, we're doing this great project externally to impact the community, but what are we doing at SAP? How can we make change internally too? So I think that there was a great result out of that.
Yeah, definitely, SA, I totally agree with you. And even though we are in quarantine for this year, we were not able to go to Casa Trans, but our major project consisted, of course, in making donations. This is something that we did during Pride Month, and sending them directly to their houses, because none of them could go to Casa Trans. So we had their addresses, their information, and we were able to do this by our own means, and it was great. And also, October for SAP is a month of service globally. And this is very, very important for us, because every employee gets to collaborate with different organizations voluntarily. So luckily, once again, we got to make donations for Casa Trans during this whole month, and we got the rest of the month to keep doing it. So we are very happy that we can still collaborate in a way and in the way that they need it. So thanks to all the collaboration that we did with Casa Trans. Back in August, I was reached out by the ATA organization that Ezequiel mentioned at the beginning of the call, and also the regional department of the LAC Trans network, to build a platform that would allow the trans community to create their own resume, or if they had one already, they could upload it. So this was huge for me. The fact that I was even considered to participate in something like this from outside SAP was amazing. I think this also complements with the current approved law of the labor quota, where 1% of employment is destined to the transgender people here in Argentina, which was recently approved. And I think this says something. There's a change, there's a movement here. There's a clear message of coherence between the private companies and the government employments. I think this raises the bar for the rest of the Latin American countries. This is what we need to do for every country, not just Latin America, but it's a start. And what I learned is that it's not about just teaching, it's about creating a bond of trust and letting the community know that they're not alone. There's always a possibility to make it better. This is clearly an example. And I think it's so hard to, since it's such a vulnerable community, and trust is something very hard to achieve with them. In the end, I think this is the whole purpose of what we are doing at SAP. It's not only teaching to the trans community so they can finish their studies and get a job. It's about educating the entire SAP community, SAP community, and beyond. And this is the message that we want to give from SAP, because this is diversity and inclusion. So, thank you.
Lucho, you're on mute.
Sorry, my buttons from computer is not working. Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Eugenia, for that. Yeah, I want to add that I really miss Casa Trans. You get to miss it, like when you engage as a volunteer. Eugenia talked a little bit about the pandemic. We were not able to go to Casa Trans this year, but we were in touch through, well, these donations or anything they need. Like we went to the whole year last year, and you made a relationship with the guys with the girls and the boy from the house. So it's really nice. And as Eugenia said, it's just more than teach and learning and go and be there, and that's it. It is I think it's very important to make them feel part of something that they are studying, and that this is really going to help them at some point. That makes them want to share what they learn, because they get excited, they get happy. I saw it, and they can be ambassadors of their own learning, and that they will want to continue being part of this process of progress, because it's hard to keep it up. You have to build trust with them, recognize them, have them, and keep them motivated. That's very important. This past Tuesday, Dina Fidas mentioned something her parents taught her. She said, Dina, the most important thing you can ever do for someone is to help them get a job. And that's something really important. And I know it's not like we're getting them a job right now or right away, but I like to think that we are helping them to build the road to get to that job. So let's do it from our ERGs. Let's do the most important thing, that is to help to find someone a job. And even more special if we can do it from someone from our LGBTIQ+ community. So it doesn't matter if you're not part of an ERG or if you work for an ONG. We encourage you all from Pride at SAP to look for your local Casa Trans and engage as a volunteer. The learning you'll get is priceless, and I can assure you that. I'm really happy, and I can't wait to go back next year to Casa Trans and continue helping the trans community in my city and my country. And we can all do this. So I'm very happy to have done this, to be here with you, sharing my experience with you, representing my company, and thank you.
Thank you, Lucho, and thank you, Euge, for those final messages. And here we have the information from Casa Trans. In case anyone would like to find out more, you can find them on Instagram and Facebook. They post regularly all their updates. And if you would like to contact us, here's our email, diversitylac@sap.com. And we'll be happy to get back to you. And now is the time for our Q&A. I don't know if we have any questions.
Yes, Ese. We have a very interesting question over here. Eduardo is asking, can you please share how it is to teach IT and English to the trans community? Because proportionally for the majority of the society, this topic is learned by a small piece of people. So who would you like to answer this question? Ese, Euge?
Yes, I can answer it. It is true that it's a small group that have access, which is why we work very hard on the donations of the computers, and we wanted everyone to learn individually. We also, as I mentioned before, we came across with different levels of knowledge, and we wanted to adapt them to their needs. We understood that after the first year, because one of the major concerns about them was, okay, why would I need this if I don't have a job? So we tried to adapt them to their needs. So even if they didn't have a job, we could teach them how to use the tools to their daily basics, like Outlook, for example, emails. We taught them how to create Gmail accounts, and we would send them information. And it was actually a challenge because most of them only had a Wi-Fi service when they go to Casa Trans. Casa Trans, it's open every day, and they even go to have their meals, to wash their clothes. So Wi-Fi was also part of it because they didn't have it. They don't have it where they live. So yeah, it was challenging there, and that was why we went with them to our offices because we wanted them to know how this SAP business model works. It's not far away, even though it seems. It's not far away from them if they have the right people. I consider that we are the right people. We can help them, and they have understood that we are there. We're not going anywhere just because there's COVID outside and we are on quarantine. It's not gonna stop there. So you just have to keep it up. You can cross your arms and say, okay, there's nothing else that I can do. You just gotta keep in touch with them. I do it personally. I have most of them. They are on my cell phone, and we talk through WhatsApp, and I need to know how they are doing. So it also helps in that way to teach them some stuff remotely, let's say, of computing. I also do that, but I do it on my own. It's something that comes out of you, grows out of you.
Okay, thank you, Euge. Now we have a question from Claudia Ferguson. So I'm going to allow you to talk here in Zoom, Claudia, or if you prefer, I think I already saw your question here in the chat, but I'm enabling you to your microphone in case you wanna speak up. Can you hear us, Claudia? Okay. Well, I think I will pass to her question, which is in the chat, and let me interrupt in case it's not correct, Claudia. Here it says, I would like to ask about the criteria on Argentina legislation, whether a person can request a change in their gender identification without going through a surgical sex change and get government ID with a gender opposite to their born gender. Okay, Ese, do you want to answer this question?
Yes, there's a law on gender identity that's the one I mentioned. That's the number is 26743. That's the number of the law of the act, and basically what it states it's that as long as what all that matters is how you identify yourself, right? So this means that if you were assigned male at birth, for instance, but identify as female, then you are entitled to request a change in your legal documentation, your ID. And there is no need to go through any kind of assessment, or there's no need for you, that your gender expression matches the name that you identify with. None of that matters. I mean, if you, if the way you see yourself doesn't match with what's assigned at birth, you can request a change, and that's what the law basically says. I will write down the number here, and it also talks about the possibility for people to get any kind of treatments or surgery that they may need for free, and that should be provided by the state, or if the person is in a working relationship, it should be provided by the healthcare provider.
Okay, thank you, Ese. We have another question here from Michelle Goyes. We have this question. What was the reaction of the SAP colleagues when they get to know they were going to work and to volunteer with the transgender community? So Euge, Lucho, do you want to answer this one?
We actually had a great feedback. SAP it's a business that works around everything that's related to diversity and inclusion, and they were eager for this new project, let's say, because everything was new, and most importantly, they wanted to learn what we were going to bring to the company, because they also were unaware of, not about the community per se, but the actual situation. It wasn't, the obstacles that we had were just learning along the way. When we had our first employee, our transgender employee, how to work with HR, with the health service, all those things. And that might seem complicated, but we can even go simpler as, okay, which bathroom would you like to use? But what we tried to do was to make it as an approach as if it was any other employee from SAP. If you have a disability, if you use a wheelchair, you will need a ramp, you will need a bigger bathroom, everything that works for diversity and inclusion. So they were on board, and they were very curious also to see how this program would work. In terms of educating. That took a little bit longer, but we had great feedback from the employees. We have programs for the managers. We also have programs for, we have guidelines for employees who want to make a transition also. What they need to do, who they need to reach, what the managers need to do, how they need to approach to their teams. We have all of those things established. So we had the theory, we only needed the practice. So it wasn't as hard as I thought. I think that now with the new laws and the improvements that we have done during this past 3 years, once we go back to the offices or get to work again at Casa Trans, it's going to be easier to open job positions to expand this community. But I consider ourselves to be lucky in that area because we didn't actually have people rejecting that project.
Yeah, and also if I might add, in terms of these learning opportunities that we offer to Casa Trans, this model of collaboration that we created was, it was really good because it demanded for volunteers to go on a weekly basis to create a program, and that is now being replicated with other organizations that we work with from a CSR perspective. So really what we created was amazing, and it's now impacting other underrepresented and vulnerable groups.
Yeah, that's right. I would also like
Okay.
to, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, sorry. Go ahead,
It's okay,
Lucian.
thanks, Andy. No, I would like to add to that it's true, yes, that leaders, managers, my leader, my manager, we didn't have any problem with. They were very curious about it and they were very happy. Colleagues as well. I had sometimes one colleague preparing the classes for Casa Trans. Also friends of mine. It's something really good because so many people, even sometimes working in a company where we have policies of inclusion. Some people they don't know about the trans community and everything that goes through. So it's you can make it very visible, and it's something really good. And we really have support from, at least from my managers, my colleagues. We always share the information, and it was something really good. I just wanted to add that.
Okay, wonderful, Luciano. Thank you all for sharing. We are getting very positive feedback in the chat. We have just one final question to close this section. Elliot is asking about the internal process in SAP in order to be able to donate to non-profit organization. He's asking if this process is global or is it country level. So perhaps, Ese, you have more insight in that part?
Yes. This is it depends on the country capabilities, actually. There was at least with SAP and with tech companies, there's usually a lot of renewal of electronic devices. So there's leftovers that people do not use. So what we do is use them for our CSR initiatives, whether that means making donations or just taking them to a volunteering opportunity to make use of them for whatever purpose. So it's a local. It depends on the local capabilities, but I would say that it's the opportunity is global. Yeah.
Okay, then thank you, Ese. I think that could be all. I think we are in time. But thank you for joining our session. Thanks for hearing our stories. If you would like to add something else to close, Euge, Ese, Lucho.
Lucho, you're on mute.
You're in mute, Lucho.
Again, just one thing real quick. If you have any question, any concern, you can contact us with no problem to Euge, Ezequiel, or myself. If you have any question about how to start doing this or whatever question you may have, just contact us. You have all the information to contact us. Thank you for being here today.
Yes. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everyone.